Let's appreciate our worship team as they have their seats. Hallelujah. Just stand to your neighbor and tell them, this is the day that the Lord has made. And we should rejoice in it. I want to take this opportunity to thank our bishop and our reverend, our father and mother, who are not with us this morning. And they sent me with their greetings. They are in our Nairobi church this morning. So have you received their greetings? Yes, they say that they miss you so much, but they shall be back. And I also want to thank them for giving me this opportunity to just be here and to preach in their absentia. And I also thank my husband for allowing me to stand here. Because you know, yeye ndio priest. Yeye ndio head. Na akinipea tik, nakuja. So this morning, I'm going to talk about something. And the title of my teaching this morning is End Suddenly. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, End Suddenly. I'm a teacher, so we shall be very interactive this morning. Have you told them, End Suddenly? You have to put it like it is, what is it called? Like exclamatory, End Suddenly. Yes. So, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story of a man. This man, he was a good man. He was a godly man. He was a righteous man. And something happened to him that he never saw coming. This man constantly prayed for his children every day, constantly, without fail, because he was concerned about their relationship with God. And because of all of that, being a good man, being a godly man, being a righteous man, God blessed him. Yet, in the space of very few minutes, his life changed. Everything he loved and everything that he held dear to him was wiped out and taken away from him. I know some of you already know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Job. And the entire book of Job is dedicated to his life and is dedicated to his experiences. And right now I want us to read Job chapter 1 from verse 13 to 22. I'll be reading from the Amplified Classic. The one that Nigel has is not too far from what mine will be, so we'll read together. And there was a day when Job's sons and his daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house on his birthday. And there came a messenger to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them. And the Sabines swooped down upon them and took away the animals. Indeed, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Verse 16, while he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the fire of God, lightning, has fallen from the heavens and has burnt up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. And I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the Chaldeans divided into 3 bands and made a raid upon the camels and have taken them away. Yes, and have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, there came a great wild wind from the desert and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young people, and they are dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job arose and rent his robe and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped and said, naked, without possessions, came I into this world from my mother's womb. and naked, without possessions, shall I depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed, praised, and magnified in worship be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Can you see that? Those were just a few minutes. While he's being told, and by the way, the camels, then another one comes, oh, Master Job. Oh, in the space of very few minutes. Now I have a question to ask this morning. How do we deal with the suddenlies in our life? The dictionary describes suddenly as something that happens unexpectedly. It catches you unawares. You are not expecting it. Like this morning, we have left the house. I woke up very early because I knew I was the one speaking. I could barely sleep. So I was up very early and I prepared the child, I prepared the husband, I prepared the house, everything. So I was ready to get out. While I was getting out, I sat in the car to put it on. It refused to go on. I'm looking at the time. Yes, I woke up early, but we were late. I looked at the time. It's already time for the service. So I looked at him. We decided we are mechanics. So we opened the bonnet, touch the engine, tunaigonga. We hit the engine, take a stone, hit the, what are they called, those things? Plugs. Those, the things that are on the battery. Tunagonga battery, na stone. I go, put it on, nothing is happening. So I called my sister here, Olive, please, you better come for me. Because if you don't, someone else will have to preach. So that is a suddenly that happened to me this morning. So I had the choice to either get angry, say, Shetani ashindwe, in the name of Jesus, this car shall start, no weapon formed, or I just take it the way I took it, and I called for someone to pick me up. So how do we deal with the suddenlies in our life? Sudden illness, sudden problems. Do we get angry at God and start murmuring and complaining about our lives? Do we get angry with everyone? Because sometimes when something happens to us, we'll get angry. We don't even want to see people. You now seclude yourself. You decide, now I'm isolating myself. I don't want to talk to people. I don't want people to talk to me. I don't want people to see me. And you put yourself in a shelf. You just hide yourself from everyone when something has happened to you. Or do we deal with them like Job? Just look at this man. First, he was told about his donkeys and oxen. Then he's told about the fire of God that consumed the sheep and the servants. Then about his camels. Then another came to tell him about his children. First of all, let us see, Job was very rich. Can you imagine, for the donkeys and the oxen, there were servants. Because when the Sabines came to take the donkeys and the oxen, they also slayed the servants. Then he had camels. And for the camels, there were servants. Then he had sheep. For the sheep, there were servants. Then he had sons and daughters. And for the sons and daughters, there were servants that served them. So this man was very rich. But let's look at verse 22. In all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. If you continue with the chapters in the rest of the chapters, there's a part where you see the wife tells him, just curse God and die. Ni, why are you enduring all of this? Why are you enduring all of this? But Job, he did not sin. He did not curse at God. He didn't do anything. He didn't shout at God. He didn't complain. And look at everything that happened to him. Imagine your children, your possessions, everything. And that's why he said in the chapter before that, I think 21, naked I came. Is it 21, Nigel? Yes. Naked, without possessions, came I into this world. And naked shall I depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Now, God is a God of suddenly. God is a God of suddenly. And he does not always work as we want or think. Because most times we want God to do what we want. God, by this time, I want this and this to have happened. And by this time, I want this and this to have happened. But God does not always work as we want or think. He is a God of surprises. But his suddenlies are filled with his power, they are filled with his mercy, and they are filled with his love. And they always happen with our best interests at heart. Because you can think about what happened to Job. Why would God take away his children, take away everything? But if you have read that book, you know that the devil told God, "You just give me this man, I show you wewe hujui." And you think Job is your servant? You think Job loves you? You just give him to me. Nitamchapa na hii, nichape na hii. I give him this, I do this, I do this. Kidogo kidogo, you will see. He's not yours. But God knew that all of this would happen to Job, and yet he allowed it to happen. Now, God always operates in a realm above what we can think or imagine. Even if you've lost your job or lost an opportunity, you lost a venture, something was coming for you and it disappeared. To us, it may seem like a setback or a very disorienting thing, but God suddenly always have you at heart. Ephesians 3, verse 20. And now to him who, by in consequence of the action of his power that is at work within us, is able to carry out his purpose and do super abundantly, not just abundantly, but super abundantly, far above, far over and above all that we dare ask or think, infinitely beyond our highest prayers, desires, thoughts, hopes, or dreams. This is because his thoughts and his ways are high, much high above ours. And we know that is in the book of Isaiah 55 from verse 8 to 9. It talks about his thoughts, his ways are higher than ours. We cannot comprehend what God does. Sometimes we don't even understand it. Now, to be suddenly by God does not indicate a lack of faith. Or God is saying, "Oh, you don't believe me, wacha nikuchape na hii." No. It doesn't indicate that you have or don't have faith. Suddenlies can happen as you pray and wait on something from God. Suddenlies can happen as you go about your daily business. They can even happen when you're surrounded by the enemy and find yourself in difficult situations. So suddenlies don't happen because you have lack of faith. They can happen even as you're just walking around, going about your business, going about your life. And by the suddenlies are not like the compositions that our children write or the ones that we used to write. "Oh, I was asleep. I woke up at the crack of dawn and suddenly my nose caught the scent of a sweet aroma from the kitchen." That is not a suddenly, and that is not the suddenlies I'm talking about. No, children, if you read their compositions, there are so many suddenlies. We were sitting in class and suddenly we had screeching, tires, oh, hoods. Those are not the suddenlies that we are talking about. I'll show you suddenlies in the Bible because everything, as Brian was saying, we are Bible-based. The first suddenly I'll show you is in the book of Acts chapter 2 and verse 2. "And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting." Like the rushing of violent, I like that. The rushing of a violent tempest blast, and it filled the whole house in which they were sitting. God's suddenlies are from heaven. A suddenly can't come from the road, the way I've told you. Oh, something has just happened, chua. No. God's suddenlies are from heaven. And though the enemy may instigate, or he may seem to orchestrate, it is only God in heaven that can regulate. Can I repeat that? though the enemy may instigate is like plotting, or he may seem to orchestrate, he's the one guiding it. It's only God in heaven that regulates. And that is why whatever happened to Job, God told them, do whatever you want. There's a time he even had sores all over his body. But God told him, don't touch his heart. Do whatever you want to do, but don't touch his heart. Why? Because God regulates. You cannot be given what you cannot handle. You cannot be given what you cannot handle. So the enemy decided, oh, I've killed your children. You don't know, you think I've stopped. Higher. Let me give you swords. Let me give, Job was left, right, center. So many things happened to him. But yet, he still praised God. So God regulates. He is the one who regulates. Before your suddenly reaches you, it has already passed through God's hands. I suddenly cannot catch God by surprise. That is going to happen to her? I didn't know. Then God starts talking to you. By the way, I didn't know that was going to happen. I'm so sorry. No. It's already gone through God's hands. So he knows. Suddenly, number 2. Acts chapter 9 and verse 3. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. If you know this story, this is the story of Paul, who was then Saul. So God's suddenlies will change or interrupt, rather will change and interrupt your life. As you journey, as you're living your life, he will come. He wants to interrupt what you're doing so that he can show you what he is doing and what he wants to do with you. Hey, this is the story. As he journeyed, he came near Damascus. Yes, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven. Put the one in Amplified. I think it was as he traveled. Yeah, now he traveled on. He came near Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. This is about the prosecutor of believers. Persecutor, not prosecutor. Persecutor of the believers. Saul. When that suddenly happened to Saul, number 1, he fell on the ground. He didn't even know who was talking to him. A bright light. You just imagine yourself. You're just going about your business. You're walking in town. Then a bright light from heaven comes. Of course, you'll fall down. After he fell down, he began to tremble and shake. Then what happened to him? Then he lost his sight for 3 days. When he was down, yes, his eyes were open, but he couldn't see. He lost his sight for 3 days. And then finally, what happened to him? His name changed from Saul to Paul. So suddenlies will interrupt and change your life. You might be called Mercy, then you're just given Jane. Huh? Change your life. Can you imagine? Persecutor of the saints falls down, begins to tremble, loses his sight. He's told, go to Ananias, go to, he's sent so many places without seeing. That is suddenly number 2. Suddenly number 3. Acts chapter 16 from verse 26. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's hands were loosed. Now, in the previous verses, we see Paul and Silas. This is about Paul and Silas. Paul and Silas were singing, and it was midnight. They were singing hymns. The hymns are timeless, so they might be the same ones. Maybe they were singing, which hymn might they have been singing? Deacon Charity, which hymn might they have been singing? They might have been singing, It is so sweet to trust in Jesus. The other prisoners were just listening to them, wondering who is in a cell and singing to Jesus. Who is this Jesus? Just to trust, take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know that says the Lord. It's midnight, by the way, and they're singing very loudly, Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him more and all. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. You can imagine there were skeptical prisoners there laughing at them, wondering, now, you mumeshikwa, so what are you singing to Jesus for? Where was your Jesus? Because you were caught. But they continued, midnight. God's suddenlies will shake you loose from the prisons that have held you. Hey. Because even a prison has a foundation, and that foundation is what holds it in place and keeps it from crumbling. But God's power comes and breaks it immediately. So you can imagine they're just singing. They're continuing to sing. Then suddenly, the doors are open and the chains are loosed. To be suddenly by God always leaves us with 4 things: thoroughly satisfied, completely humbled, gloriously changed, number 3, and delivered. Can I say that again for those who are writing? God suddenly leave you thoroughly satisfied, completely humbled, gloriously changed, and delivered. I wouldn't want to imagine now Paul and Silas after the doors are open, because the guard was about to kill himself because he thought now, the prisoners have escaped. Paul and Silas said, hey, my brother, we are here. We have not gone anywhere. As a matter of fact, they sat down and they waited for the what are they called? The guard. Yes, the guard. Hey, when you stand here, you get so nervous. English, out. The guard. They just sat there. So you can imagine if they were saying, but then I wish it would have happened during the day so that everyone can see and hear. No, it happened at midnight or past, because we are told it was midnight. Maybe now it was 12:30. You don't know whether they sang for 1 hour or 2 hours. But they were thoroughly satisfied. They walked out. They were completely humble, like, hey? But then maybe they might have thought, now this is their life. They'll remain there forever. But God suddenly, they leave you like that. But then there is a 5th thing. I forgot. Totally odd. Number 5. Totally odd. You remain at awe. And like, hey, that has happened to me. That has happened to me. So suddenly there was a rush, a great wind, there was a sound from heaven. God's suddenlies are from heaven. Suddenly 2. God's suddenlies will change or interrupt your life. And 3, God's suddenlies will shake you loose from the prisons that hold you. Maybe you're there and you got a suddenly and you're wondering, hey, my suddenly is not like the suddenlies you're talking about. God's suddenlies can take whatever shape, whatever form. And that's why I said you might have lost your job or an opportunity that would have really brought, a lot of money, or it would have settled so many things that you needed to have been settled. But whatever shape or form it comes in, that's from God. So sometimes let's stop saying Shetani, the devil. The devil, yes, the devil he orchestrates some things, but some things are also from God. Shetani, sometimes maybe even he says, hey, mumenionea. Hata sikujui, who are you? Sometimes even the devil doesn't know you, any nani. Yeah? Because God does things, and we were told by our bishop in this year of expectation and hope, if you remember what he was saying, that our lives will go through roller coaster. A roller coaster. God will, yes, there are new opportunities, new things, but God will change your life. God will bring some things, disruptions is what he said. So maybe you're going about your business and then that door closes, in your face. It's not the devil, it's God. So God suddenly will leave us thoroughly satisfied, completely humbled, totally awed, gloriously changed, and delivered. Now, in conclusion, how do we respond to God's suddenlies? Number one, the first question I asked is, how do we deal with God's suddenlies? Dealing and responding. No, dealing is something with your heart. Unaichukua aje? How do you deal with it? That's why I asked you, do you get angry? Or do you praise God? Job praised God. Others get angry. But now, how do we respond? Action. How do we respond to God's suddenlies? Number one, by receiving them. Receiving them. Even that illness, receive it. That closed door, receive it. Don't reject what God has ordained for you. And don't refuse what God chooses to use. He can use anyone and anything. So just receive it. Don't reject it and don't refuse whatever God will use. Receive that suddenly. It might be good, it might be bad, receive it. Number two, by resting in them. Resting in them, in the suddenlies. Rest in the fact that you are in God's hands and that God's promises are true. Hebrews 4:9 in KJV says, there remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. So rest. There's even the song that says, when the oceans rise, I will be still and know that He is God. And number three, by rejoicing in them. What Job did. Let's go back to Job 1:21. Job 1:21. Verse 21. Yeah, verse 21. Do you have it? Yes. Part B says, blessed, praised, and magnified in worship be the name of the Lord. Even after he had lost all of that, he still praised God. So number three, by rejoicing in them. Philippians 4:4. I told rejoice in the Lord always. So we are to rejoice in the Lord in all things. Good, bad, sad, happy. Rejoice in the Lord always. So we respond to God suddenly by receiving them, by resting in them, by rejoicing in them. So children of God, as I close, remember God's suddenlies will bless us, and only bless us, when we learn how to respond to them properly. If you don't respond to them properly, it won't bless you. It can't bless you. It can't work for you. It can't work for you. It can't work for you. So you might be there and you need a suddenly. Maybe a suddenly has not happened to you. You need a suddenly of healing. You need a suddenly of deliverance. You just need a suddenly for God to do something, for God to shake something loose. There's a prison, there's something that is holding you, binding you. It is just keeping you down. And you need to be set free from it. I want you to know that God is still moving. God is still working. God never stops. And the suddenly will happen. Because as long as you're a child of God, it will happen.